So, fellas, you know this is the 1-year mark for this podcast. Happy birthday to us.
Woo woo.
We should celebrate this properly. We got us a little present. We're going to have a special guest on with us tonight. If you clicked on the link, you've already seen who, because it probably says it right there. He's an author, a motivational speaker. You may have seen him on Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International. Ladies and gentlemen, the paranormal rock star himself, Dustin Pari.
Hey,
What's up, Dustin? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Sorry for the little bit of a delay there. I forgot I updated my Mac, and she's a little sluggish on the get-go now, you know.
It's all good. So you survived the snowstorm we had?
Yeah, man, got up, shoveled for 2 hours, drove to work, same old crap.
Nice. Glad to hear it. Well, we want to thank you for popping on the podcast tonight.
Oh, my pleasure, man. No worries. I appreciate it.
So, yeah, we just want to ask a bunch of random questions. They're not random. We actually pre-planned a few of them, but we want to pick,
okay.
We want to pick your brain.
Stuff, man. Whatever you guys want, man. It's grand.
All right. So, we've had a few guests on this show before, and we kind of like to start off and ask what got you into the paranormal. All
right. Sure, man. So, my whole journey with this started when I was a kid. Living in a little house down in Providence and seeing what we would today, classify as a shadow figure, but as a child, I had no idea what it was. And I was, just around 8, 9 years old or so, and I was in bed, and my family was up. They were down in the hall, down in the living room. The hallway was folded up, and I looked over from my bed, and this tall thing, about 6 feet tall, was just kind of standing there. And it was interesting to me because it was all backlit. There was nothing there. But it looked like a vaporous form of a person in gray. And I was petrified, so I just covered my head up and said my prayers, and I never wanted to see it again, and I never did there, but that really kind of started me down this journey. That planted the seed of curiosity into the unknown,
Awesome. Yeah, it seems to be a common thing for a lot of investigators is like the childhood home kind of
growing up in a
threw it at you.
Yeah, man, for sure. I mean, it's I have met 1 or 2 people that were just interested in the field, like just because of stories and things, and they never actually witnessed anything to start. But yeah, I'd say the majority of us, I think, have started because of something that we went through ourselves.
One thing I just wanted to say too was I love the work that you do with the kids, being a motivational speaker. I've seen a lot of your videos.
Thank you.
I'll tell you, very inspirational, and it's nice to see somebody out there that has like a true, solid attitude, and wants to help the kids constantly, because we need that more and more every day.
Yeah, I really appreciate that very much. I'm very thankful for the little platform that I was given because of the reality TV shows and such. And I'm here to help anybody that I can. I try to do my best with social media, and getting out there and do my motivational lectures really does mean the most to me. I love the paranormal. I love the spirit world. And it's opened up a lot of doors for me. But I think the most important thing, I think my life's work is trying to help people to understand this life as we go through it. And who better to work with than children who have so much opportunity ahead of them, to make change for this world and for their own lives. So it's something I care about doing greatly. And thank you very much.
No, thank you. We appreciate it.
All right. How'd you get involved with TAPS?
So that happened just randomly. I had come home from working one of my jobs. I always have like 2 or 3 jobs at a time. I was working at an ambulance company, and I came home one night, I was clicking through TV and I saw, these guys. They were investigating, but they were in people's homes and they were wanted, and they were asked to be there. And I was like, wow, this is a lot better than what I do, which is just getting out of work, going out in the woods and getting chased out of places, and so I made it a point to catch another episode, and I did that, and then I noticed they filmed, locally here in Rhode Island, and I was like, well, I'm going to try to get in touch with those guys, and I sent a bunch of emails, and I like to remind them that nobody wrote back to me the first time, but I stayed with it, because if you believe in something and you want something, you can't give up on it, and I wrote back again, and finally one of the young ladies that was there met me out for coffee and got me an interview with the guys, and originally, I told them my story. I told them my background because I had a television background in production for CBS and Fox News prior to my career in healthcare. And I was like, I see what you guys do, and like the way your equipment's not cared for, like I can really help with a lot of that. And they agreed to bring me on the team, but I couldn't be on the show, which was fine because I was very busy. But then a couple months down the road, they were filming locally, so they brought me in, and that became more of a regular thing. So that continued for several years. I could never commit to a full-time gig because I wouldn't leave my day job, but I was really thankful for the time I got with them. And then I left when I wanted to get married and settle down because I didn't think that was a great way for me to start a marriage by traveling all the time. But a couple of years later, they started that international show, and my daughter was just about a year old, and to be quite honest, it was a great opportunity, and we kind of needed the extra money, and I said, well, I'm not going to get this chance again, and I grew up in kind of a quiet little town in part of Providence. It was a nice neighborhood, but over the years it changed. We were not too far from like where the projects are and such, and the chances for me to travel to 27 other countries, which ended up being the count, that was not going to come again. So I'm very thankful for that happening. And then I left there because I just missed my wife and my little one so much. And it wasn't like it is now, man. You think it was only like 8 years ago or something, but 7 years ago. And it wasn't easy to communicate, like it wasn't even like capable of getting a Skype connection everywhere you went. A lot of places still had dial-up, and like it was awful for that. But it was great for the opportunity. And I come back here again, and then they asked me to come finish up the last 2 seasons of Ghost Hunters, which was just a really cool opportunity to kind of see it through to the end there on Sci-Fi. And I know they're still working on some things and stuff, but I'm thankful for all the opportunities I had, and I don't worry about what's to come.
Nice. You still in touch with all those guys, or?
Oh yeah. It's like the Paranormal Mafia. Like you're never really out.
Nice.
They bring you around. Actually, I had dinner. I had the opportunity to have dinner with Steve just last week. So we met up. Most of us still live here in England, so it's easy to see each other. And then I was with Grant down at the USS North Carolina a couple weeks ago doing an event. So yeah, I'm in touch with all of them regularly. And then we travel a lot, so we see each other on the road at events here and there. And actually, just this past fall, I even had the honor of performing a wedding ceremony for Chris Williams. So
Nice.
We're a nice little family, dysfunctional as all get out, but we're nice.
Excellent. So, you said you performed the ceremony and stuff. We got to see you do a Christmas lecture, which was awesome, by the way. You did the Christmas Carol and made me look at that like I'd never looked at anything before. Like, kind of opens your eyes a little bit. But you seem like you're a pretty religious fellow. Is that a fair guess there? Or?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I grew up in like a Catholic school type thing, and I really appreciated it, and I enjoyed learning a lot of the teachings and the stories and the parables. And but by the time I got done in high school, and this isn't a comment on the school, I think they did a great job. But by the time I left there, I felt like I was more atheist than anything because I didn't feel the connection, and I needed that connection, and I just went forward with life, and I didn't do any harm to anybody or anything, and it took me a while to find my way, and I started reading like Eastern philosophy, and I was reading about Buddhism and Taoism, and I started going to local churches again, and I started in South Providence. I wanted to try like some Baptist churches, and I ended up in a National Catholic parish that I liked for a while, and now I go to an Episcopalian place, and it's important for me for a sense of community. I believe that God, however you see him or her or it, I believe that God is everywhere. You don't need to go to one specific place to communicate. I pray a lot in traffic because Lord knows that's where I need it the most. And I feel like I think the thing that really brought me around to God and religion was K-Love Radio. I started listening to K-Love Christian radio, and they emphasized through the music and their words relationship, and relationship has forgiveness, and relationship has understanding. And I was like, well, that makes sense. I don't need like an absentee landlord yelling at me for things I didn't do and judging me. I need somebody to walk with me and understand me and realize that my understanding is that we're all spirits going through this human experience, and as we go through it together, we should be rising together and working together and learning together and loving, and we're going to screw up and we're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. And that's part of what we do in this human experience, and I needed a loving relationship with God to understand that. And I always tell people, I think that all are one. I think that as long as, regardless of how you view religion or what you worship or how you worship, if it's in a positive and loving way and you're being kind to others, we're all on the same team. It's just different prophets and different languages for different people of different places, but it's all the fundamental good things, and that's what we need to focus on, the commonalities and not the differences.
You would certainly make one hell of a pastor.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but you would. I love being up there, man. I like talking to people.
I've heard plenty of them, and trust me, you have a great idea on it, or a great outlook on it.
Now, speaking a little more on the religious aspect, when you do investigate the paranormal, do you tend to stay more scientific, more spiritual, or do you have to find that happy medium?
It's interesting for the show. Like, I get it. They want us to have equipment to document things because you're trying to show the client, you're trying to show the people at home, so that's cool. But for me, it's really a spiritual journey. Okay. Soapbox time here for old D. Pari. I don't. I'm 40 years old, but I feel like I'm one of those 80-year-old guys inside yelling at kids to get off my lawn. I don't like a lot of technology and stuff, and so you go investigating, and you're sitting there with all your blinking lights and all these cameras and flashlights and all this stuff, and I'm like, something could happen right near you, and I don't know if you can say you actually witnessed it. Like, yeah, maybe you document it, but did you live it? And then, like, you don't even have to be a paranormal investigator. Like, go to a concert, and you see everybody just holding up their phones, recording the action. Are you watching the concert? Are you actually physically there? Or are you just an extension of equipment documenting a moment that you can't truly say that you lived? And I think that's the biggest problem in our society today, is we're so self-obsessed with social media and posting and documenting and hashtagging everything that we're not communicating. We've got the most incredible ways to talk to each other the world over, but we don't really have anything of value to say. No one's being thoughtful of loftier things. We're just spouting off and arguing about crap, and it's just amazing because we have the potential, but we're just squandering it, And I'm guilty of the gratuitous selfie, especially if I make a nice chicken parmesan dinner. I like to show off my craft, But you got to make sure you spend time with the people that you're with while they're here with you, and you can't just sit there staring at that dang phone all day.
Once again, completely on point.
Yep. Absolutely. So we'll talk a little bit more about the ghost hunting stuff. Then I want to move on to some other stuff. But you were with Ghost Hunters for quite a few seasons. You had Ghost Hunters International. They were like pretty much the first TV show that showed this type of stuff. So how do you think that they paved the way for bringing a taboo subject into the mainstream? And do you think that now that it's mainstream, is it kind of taken as serious as it should be?
It's weird, man. There were some little shows out here and there before, not so much in the reality venue, but there were some things that talked about this stuff, but it was never to this level. And I think it was great, and because it allowed for it to become a little bit easier to talk about, But it was kind of a double-edged sword because, we made it easier to talk about this subject and to find other people that have these experiences and everything. But we were limited by what we were able to do because it's, also a television show. So, they don't show everything that we do. So we weren't able to communicate, I think, effectively enough how serious some things can be, the amount of time that we would spend at places, the follow-up that would go into it. And I think some of the people out there watching that had the best of intentions that wanted to try to do this stuff just took page after page from that playbook and didn't expand upon it on their own. And I think now there are a lot of people out there coming up with some incredible ideas, and I love that. I love when I meet people and they're like, hey, how about this? I tried that. And technology is great for documentation. So expand on that. Make new things, but don't become so chained to them that you're taking yourself out of it. I wanted to make a more spiritual approach. TV networks, they're not a big fan of spiritual type things. It's against what they do, to be quite honest. It's the god of technology, television, and now television's even changed to streaming and every other thing. I don't even understand it anymore, but it's changing so fast. There's no time for a little white boy with spiky hair to start saying prayers and trying to connect with spirits on a different level. But that's my way, and it's cool because it doesn't have to be for everybody. Like, everyone should do things slightly differently. We shouldn't all be singing from the same hymnal. It's like we're never going to advance the field that way. But I personally think too that we shouldn't always look for certain answers. It's cool to document people that may be visiting with us. I never think people are trapped. I think some kind of linger a little bit longer just due to their own thing. I don't think that God, however you view God, would ever put a lock on the door and say, no, this place isn't for you. You can't come to the afterlife. I think that a lot of people who just visit, I think sometimes it's just lingering energy. It really bothers me that Hollywood's perception has really warped people's mind into thinking that everything's demonic and everything is gloom and doom. And because Bruce Willis didn't know he was dead in Sixth Sense, everybody has to ask, do you know you're dead? They know they're dead. They haven't changed clothes. They haven't pooped. They haven't sat in traffic. A lot of things that you do when you're alive you haven't done when you're dead, so you would realize that. But for some reason we think, well, I saw this on Hollywood, so this must be reality, and it's not. And it drives me nuts because I feel that we're losing the respect for the spirituality that we should have, and more importantly, we're missing our spiritual connection in this world. I work in oral surgery and facial and cosmetic surgery, and the docs I work for, they do great things for people, but what I notice a lot is I go to the gym every morning because I want to stay healthy, because I hope that I can be around a long time for my family, for my daughter especially, and being healthy is a part of that. I don't need to be, a big muscle-bound guy or anything. I don't need to be the strongest guy at the gym. I just want to be healthy. And I see other people there that work out constantly. They're working on their bodies too. And then I go to work and I see people getting cosmetic surgery, and we're getting, neurotoxins shot in our face so we don't wrinkle, and fillers so we don't look old. And we're buying these flashy cars and these big houses, but are we spending any time to develop ourselves spiritually? We are spiritual beings, and we are just killing ourselves with material crap, and we're just covering up our broken insides with shiny new iPhones and fancy new clothes. But what are we doing for ourselves in a spiritual nature? And I think that the paranormal has that opportunity for people to realize that there is more to this, that we were meant for more than this. But unfortunately, we end up just looking at blinking lights and saying, do you know you're dead?
So do you still investigate, or is that kind of taking a back burner for a while?
No, I still love it. It's really cool. Like, when you get that interaction, I was just out in Malvern Manor in Iowa recently, and I've been there before, but this time there was the spirit of a young girl that was there, and she was very interactive, and it was really cool. It seems women and children interact with me the most. I think it's just like a personality thing. Like, I'm very non-threatening and like just kind of chill, and she spoke Spanish, and I haven't spoke Spanish in like 6 or 7 years. Like, outside of just like a random phrase here and there, just to kind of amuse myself. But and it was like a lot of back and forth, give and take. It was really cool, and I'm always very thankful for those interactions, because you investigate, and 9 times out of 10 you don't get anything. Yeah. So when there's something there that relates to you and connects with you, and you have that vibe, and you're going back and forth on stuff. It's amazing. And the few times I've glimpsed something, and you see the image, the apparition. It's mind blowing to be that close to the other side, But it's all interwoven. It's all connected. We've just chosen to look away from it, because it's hard to keep people in line in this life if they're too busy thinking about the next one and talking about the next one. We need people to do 9 to 5 jobs, at least 40 hours, if not 2 jobs a week, and we need them to pay credit card bills and buy shiny crap from Amazon. That's what we need. We don't need people asking spiritual questions and trying to grow.
After investigations, do you actually have any cleansing rituals that you do?
No, I really don't. My spiritual life is very strong. Like, my prayer life is a day-to-day thing for me. So I don't do anything extra really when I do cases or anything, because I just feel, I always tell people, if you keep yourself in a good place physically and spiritually, emotionally and mentally, I really think that you lessen those chances of anything bad happening to you. And not just in the spiritual realm, but like just in your day-to-day life. You get in the practice and the habit of being a positive person and being happy and looking for happy things. And like, listen, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, I have my days too where I'm just like, oh my God, I just want to stay in bed and not deal with the outside world. But I just choose not to let it get to me. I choose not to let it affect me. I'm not going to let somebody else like steal my sunshine. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to live my life and do things the best I can. And you get into that habit, and the darkness and the dark people from this side of the life and the other, they just kind of fade away. They just stay away from it because it's very powerful. Positivity and love and kindness are incredibly powerful, and when it becomes habit for you, it's not even a conscious thought anymore. It's just who you are.
So you could say nothing's ever like followed you from an investigation or any place that you've been to?
I don't think so. There's been 1 or 2 times where some weird stuff happened at home, but I can't say it definitely has to do with something I did or a spirit from a place that I was. I think sometimes it's just like you start doing this stuff, and I notice a peak of activity like throughout my whole life. Mostly in the fall, because I'm out there every night doing paranormal lectures. I'm doing a lot more investigations. I'm doing a lot more events. And I kind of think, like, you leave the light on for them, like, oh, this guy is, like, communicating. This guy is trying to interact, So I think that they try to get your attention. Not, in a negative way, but just like, hey, I'm here too, And they freak the cats out a lot. But other than that, I'm pretty okay with it.
One of the questions I had, too, was how did you get involved in doing lectures and stuff? As far as, because we had gone to a lecture with you. Did someone just come up and ask you, hey, what do you think about a lecture? Or did you have to make appointments?
No, it started, I was on the international show and coming home, and I was trying to, I went right back to my day job because I had just taken a leave of absence to go film there. And I still wanted to share, what I had learned and everything. So I was actually started doing some local library stuff. And then I was approached by a group to do college lectures and everything. So I started doing that. And I was never like, a public speaker or anything prior to this, but I was never really on the shy side either, so it just seemed to be like a little natural transition. And then one thing led to another, and I really wanted to do more of my motivational stuff. People were emailing me and things on Facebook and all that stuff, and I'd write back to them, and people started coming to events, and they wanted to talk more about that stuff than they wanted to talk about the ghost stuff, and I was happy to help, I always say I have a helpful heart, and I feel like we're all in this together, so I'm here to chat and see what we can do. And that became more and more of a regular thing. So now it was weird, man. It was like September, October were really busy for lectures because the paranormal was hot, and then it started a couple motivational lectures here and there would trickle in, and then my Christmas stuff started, and man, I love my Christmas stuff.
Yeah,
it's like I'm
really
like
that too. That was awesome.
Oh, dude, my heart is like explodes around Christmas time. It's so much fun, and it's just but it was hard to get people to realize, like, listen, I'm not a one-trick pony. Like, yeah, I can tell you ghost stories, and I can tell you spiritual things about, places I've traveled around the world, but I'm capable of more. Like, let me talk to you about Christmas. Let me spin Christmas stories in a way that you never thought of. And thankfully, more and more of those places have started to open up too. So now, I'm doing lectures almost year round, which I'm really thankful for, and I'm always honored to be invited to these places and to touch people's lives, because you could be anywhere. People could be anywhere they want every night, and some people come out and choose to come to these lectures and to hear me talk and to meet with me, and it's just it's something that I do not take lightly at all.
Yeah, no, that's great. We noticed you have a great personality too for it when you came out towards this area. So another question I had was, when I do paranormal investigating, same type of thing. I feel humbled when I'm getting interaction with the spirit or something that's going on. And what are your experiences with that? And how did you deal with it?
There's been a couple that have really kind of taken me aback, and the first one has to be St. Augustine Lighthouse, which was a case that we did for the Ghost Hunters program, and it was really interesting because that was the first time I had seen an apparition since I saw that shadow figure from when I was a child, and to see this woman walking back and forth, the detail and everything, I just kind of froze, because I've been looking for that for years, and now here it was, and I didn't know what the heck to do with it, and she turned just into a little ball of light and went out through the side of the lighthouse, and I've been back there, I don't even know how many times since, and I've got another activity, but I've never seen her again. But if I had some artistic ability, I could probably draw it, but I have none. But it was one of those things that was really touching. And then I remember being in Latvia too, and hearing this disembodied voice of a woman. And it was freezing cold. It was one of the coldest cases I've ever done, and everybody was piled into the van because it was the only place that had heat. They had one little space heater in the place, one little wood stove, and it was useless. So everybody was outside in the vans, and I'm in this tiny little cell with Barry, my Irish buddy, and this gentleman, Steve Robinson, who was an incredible young man, incredible photographer. Unfortunately, we lost him last year, but it was great. He was a great little hippie. He had a big old beard and everything, and an L.A. kid, surfer, and he's there with the little camera, and he's looking at us, and we're both in there, and Barry and I are in the cell with him, and this woman's voice fills that little chamber, speaking in Latvian. And Barry and I are just staring at each other, like lost in the moment, And long after she's silent, we're still just taking it in. And through the little light that you can see from the viewfinder, you see little Steve look up, and he's like, "Dude, that just happened." And we were like, "Yeah, man, that was amazing," So there's been a couple of times, Lep Castle is probably the most famous one where I get knocked down and everything, but that wasn't a pleasant experience just because it was a rough landing, but it wasn't anything detrimental or harmful or anything. I think it just made me realize how much more respectful I need to be of investigating, because at that time I was a little headstrong, but there's been a couple where it's just it's just really, it's really touching, and it's amazing when it happens. And like you said, I'm always very, you're always very humble, and you're very thankful for that opportunity, because you don't know if it's going to happen again or how long it's going to happen, man. I remember being on the road and feeling like I was like the worst investigator on the team, like in the longest slump with not even an EVP or anything. It's like, what am I doing here? But when you click, you click. It's just like in this life. It's personality. I really believe it's personality. You
gotta have that energy.
You get along with people. You can do this podcast with anybody else. Like, you guys are buddies, so it works. Yep. And you go to talk to a spirit, and they just may not be into you, and that's fine. But you find people that click with you, and they'll chat it up, and it's really cool.
Now, one thing we like to ask everyone, and you're a good one to ask, because you guys get some of the craziest evidence that the world has seen. You got videos of apparitions moving, EVPs, stuff to physically show people. But there's still people that are like, nope, it's fake, it's fake. Do you think we're going to ever be able to prove that ghosts really do exist? Like,
I don't think we should, man. I mean, to me, like, my experiences have proven to me that the spirit world's a very real place, But I don't think that, I kind of feel like it's skipping to the end of the book sometimes, I don't want to know how it all ends. Like, I never ask those big questions, you know. Sometimes I'll ask, like, hey, like, you know, give me one word to describe heaven. Like, you know, just stuff like that. Or like, what do you do over there? And stuff like that, you know. But nothing specific about myself or my own story or my own fate or anything, because I believe that, you know, I got to lead this life. I have to find my own destiny and do what I want to do here. So, I mean, for some people, no matter what you show them, it's never going to be enough. And for some people, you could show them the littlest thing, and they instantly believe, you know. And the truth is somewhere in between there. But I think it's a very personal journey. It's a faith-based journey. It's a spiritual journey. And I always was surprised when I would meet investigators that, like, oh, I don't believe in religion or anything. And, you know, I'm like, well, what are you interacting with? What are you doing, you know? But, you know, it's fine if you don't want to classify or label yourself as one thing or another. You know, I always tell people, like, I'm a Christian in an Episcopalian church, but, you know, they didn't make me take a test or anything, but I really love the Reverend. I love the way she explains the stories, and it's not fire and brimstone and gloom and doom. It's fun, and it's light, and it's loving, and it teaches us to look out for each other. And that's what I'm there for. I'm there for that community. I'm there for that moment. And for investigating, I honestly, the reason I wanted to do Ghost Hunters originally was to show people those moments and to show people that the other side is real, and maybe that would give them pause in this life to think, you know, maybe we should live a little differently. But to have, you know, absolute proof and everyone be like, oh, okay, this is definitely, you know, like, I don't know. I think the mystery of it and the intrigue is part of that journey, and I think that we need to learn as we go. You know, if God showed up like every day at Walmart at noon, it would kind of ruin the effect.
Yep.
I also don't know why he would choose Walmart, but there's a lot
those low prices.
Exactly.
So, quick little lightning round here, because
good. I love lightning rounds.
You've been all over the world. You said 27 countries. You know, probably I don't even know how many investigations. So it's going to pertain to all those. What was your favorite location?
Favorite location? Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines.
And why is that?
We probably got the most evidence out of any location there, and that was the only place I can remember where the client's like, hey, this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and we went through and was like, oh, wow, all those things actually happened. You know, it was really cool. And it was cool on a personal level. Like, the guy was, like, broke down and started crying when we played everything for him because people were saying he was, like, a crazy man. He was the town drunk and none of this stuff happened. I'm like, oh, no, all this stuff happens. Like, here it is on camera, you know?
You probably made his life right there, just helping improve.
It was awesome.
If you could investigate anywhere, where would it be?
I always wanted to go to Greece. I wanted to go to the caves out in the Greek Isles. There's a lot of biblical history there and everything, and I just always thought their concepts of gods and goddesses and their belief structure would make for a really fun place to investigate. But unfortunately, they never let me go because they said it would all look like just caves, so it looks like I'm just in a bunch of rocks, and it wouldn't be fun for TV.
Oh, that's boring. That sucks.
Yeah.
So, what was your scariest moment on a case?
Upstairs in Castle Huska in the attic space. That was out in the old Czech Republic, and I was up in the attic with Ashley Goodwin, who was new to the team at the time, and the attic wasn't on the tour, but I like to go places off tour, especially after a couple hours in the investigation. I think the spirits that are around kind of get bored with us and go someplace that we're not. And when I was up there was this dark, shadowy mass in the corner, and it was hard to see, and not knowing the layout of the land or the castle or the animals or anything that might be around these places, I tried to throw a little rock over there just to see if it would scurry, and it didn't. And just kind of as a lark, like as a joke, like I said, hey, throw it back, because that never happens. And it happened, and it landed at the feet of our camera guy, Steve Purcell, and he like jumped back and Ashley screamed. And I said, okay, you should go downstairs and get Barry for me, because I don't know how this is going to go now. And then when Barry came up, we put the UV light on this thing, and it was crazy. It shot across the back of the attic, and it went through the window, and obviously did not disrupt the window, but it interacted with the environment, and all the birds that were in the tree in the middle of the night all went squawking off. And I was thinking, I was up here by myself for the longest time while Steve brought her downstairs to go find Barry. Like, what the heck was I thinking? That was not smart.
Wow. So, what's your go-to piece of equipment?
So if I have to use anything, I just bring an EVP recorder with me just because it's a nice thing for communication, A real-time EVP recorder is best, so at least you have a chance at some conversation. I'm not huge into all the equipment stuff. I really just want to be alive and aware of what's going on, and I just kind of feel like being there yourself, like you're the most important part of it, and reaching out to whatever's around you. So I try to focus on that. But as far as equipment does go, I think Full Spectrum is worth its weight in gold. I think that's where we need to do more research and development. I find that by changing the lighting and stuff, you get a lot of different really cool effects. There's also some different things you can do with frequency and things to kind of boost your chances of communication. So there's a lot to be done there. But for me, you can just drop me in the middle of the woods in some abandoned old house with nothing, and to me, that's a great night.
You were mentioning when the rock got thrown at your cameraman's feet. When you guys investigated with the show, you had a crew of what? Like, you had a cameraman, a sound guy?
I think they were like the whole crew, the whole Get Along gang, production and investigators. I think we had average around 12. So when you go in to investigate, everybody goes to like the common area that's usually like in a separate building or someplace far from the investigated areas, or out in the trucks or tents or wherever. And it's usually just the two investigators with a cameraman or woman and an audio operator. Barry and I and KJ and I would always try to work with, there was always 3 cameras, A camera, B camera, C camera. A and B camera have their own audio guy. C camera runs just the mic hops on his own camera by himself. And so there's not a lot of like mixing or anything. They're just taking the feed. And we would try to always work with just the C camera guy. So it's just the 3 of us. So we kind of, really lessen the chances for any contamination or anything.
That's cool. Yeah, I was going to ask if like you thought maybe having extra people there kind of deterred spirits from communicating, or like sometimes we feel like if you have a lot of people around, a spirit's not as likely to speak with you.
Yeah, it all depends on who's there and what's going on. I've done some larger investigations and stuff with different people, and I've done some at colleges and everything. It's good to have an opportunity to have different people's energy and personality. Sometimes if I'm striking out left and right, I'll ask one of the ladies there, I'm like, could you try asking a couple of questions, or, change it up and ask another guy to ask some couple of questions. I was down at the North Carolina recently, and we were down in the portion of the ship that was unfortunately hit with a torpedo. And we had a little Panasonic, the little Pandora's box thing. And I went through and asked a series of questions. I had absolutely no response. And then I had everybody else ask one question. Everybody else got a response. I was like, see? I was like, it's, there's only like 6 or 8 of us down there. But I was like, it all depends who they want to talk to, those Navy guys all had tight haircuts. And I've got this big 6 inches of spiky hair. They probably didn't like it.
Nice. So we spoke a lot about the paranormal with you. We talked a little about the motivational speak and stuff like that. But you are also, let me say that again in English. You are also an author. You've written how many books now?
5. I'm working on my 6th now.
Ooh, what's the new one going to be about? Can we get a little teaser?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's my first fiction book. Like, I've written two paranormal books straight up with Barry Fitzgerald, and then I wrote What's Next after that, which was like my first solo book that followed me as I traveled and flew from place to place and location to location. That was a lot of motivational stuff and behind the scenes stuff about television. And then I wrote Every Day for an entire year and wrote And the Devil Shivered, and that ended up being the last season of Ghost Hunters, which I had no idea when I was writing it, but there's a lot of stories about life on the road and just my day-to-day life, because I get so tired of people when I try to help them say, well, it's easy for you to say, if it was only that easy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I work constantly and I don't sleep hardly ever. Like, just because you see me on TV doesn't mean things are easy, And I wanted people not to have that out. And I also wanted to have a document to show my daughter someday when she gets older, like, this is what we did for a year. This is our family vacation. This is our life. Like, my thoughts, everything in my own words. And it was very important. Then last year we put out Kaleidoscope, which was a collection of writings of mine from back in high school. And then I wrote something in pretty much every country that we had traveled to from a sociological standpoint. And some of my motivational writings in there, even a little bit of poetry, because I fancy myself as a poet. I love writing and such, and music and everything. But this one is going to be a fiction book, and it's got a lot of motivational things in it. The characters are really coming to life. Like 4 chapters in now, and it's weird. It's like a Christmas Carol meets Alice in Wonderland meets The Wizard of Oz and a little bit of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like, my brain is pretty scrambled, and I'm just putting it in another book because, well, I like to entertain myself, and it seems some people like it as well.
Yeah, I'm in the process of reading in The Devil Shivers. And
yeah.
I really love the way you bring out how when you're at airports. Because you have to enjoy the part of seeing people and meeting people. And I always try to smile, too, and see if everybody else is going to react. So when I got to that point, I was like, oh, my God, I do this, too. I'm like, it's just people watching there at the airport. But you always go to try to say hi to someone, and it's like usually after 3 times, maybe somebody will say, hi, how are you? But you got to try anyways, you know?
You got to keep it up. You got to keep trying. It's weird, though. Like, we don't, as much as we want to be in contact, we don't really want to talk to each other at all.
I've been reading the Kaleidoscope book, and let me tell you, I was a little thrown off at first. There's a couple, like, I see you on TV, and you're a laid-back guy, and there was one part about a velvet glove. And I'm like, this guy wrote that. So,
oh, I know it well. I always caution, especially the kindly older ladies. It looks like the young grandmas that buy some of the books. I'm like, I just want you to know, some of the stuff early on I wrote back in high school. I was a different boy back in high school. And but I prefaced it with this. I think I even wrote it in the beginning of the book, like, for me to take those old writings and put it in there now and to censor it in any way would be a mistruth. It would be me lying about who I am and who I was. And the person I was 10, 20 years ago is not the person I am today, but they're all fragments of my life. And that's the whole idea behind Kaleidoscope, is that life is a journey. And yeah, I went from this like crazy, like sexed up, angry guy who wanted change and was demanding change in this world but didn't know how to get it, to this like, peaceful, loving, married hippie of a dude who's just trying to make the world a better place now through understanding and kindness and love. And I thought it was good for people to see that change, But I'm very proud of the Velvet Glove line. I personally think
I must have read that part like 3 times, saying, "Wait, no, what? Really? Yeah, no, it's there."
A quick funny story about this. I got invited to go down to this library down in New Jersey that asked me to come down year after year to do lectures, and they said, hey, we want you to come down and do a lecture about Kaleidoscope and like talk about the book. I was like, yeah, sure, I'd love the opportunity, So I drive down there after work one day, do the thing, and they're like, hey, could you do a reading from it? I'm like, oh yeah, I'll read this story. And like, I'm 2 lines before the line about the velvet glove. I'm like, oh, I should have chose this one. Like, there's women and children and elderly people here. And I just stopped and I looked at everybody and I was like, listen, this next part. And I just had to read it. I was like, well, that's, it is what it is. Like, that's what's in there. And I'm sure there's books in the library with raunchier stuff than that.
Oh, that's awesome. I can just picture those little kids.
They weren't that little, thankfully. They're like teenagers. Like, they knew.
Not so bad then.
They were on the inside.
If they got the internet, they've seen worse.
Yeah, sure. And actually, they were friends. They were the youngest people there, and they were my friend's kids. So, and like, she knows me very well, so she was aware. I was like, okay, good. Like, I don't want to be that guy,
One of the things that I noticed when I do investigating, when I'm dealing with something, for example, recently we did a house with a demonic entity in it. And I did notice a lot of times, like, we had gotten physically sick there. We were scratched. But I noticed with a demonic haunting or a demonic thing, what happens with me is I felt like I lost, like, time. Like, like the next day, I felt like it was still with me. It was like a quagmire, and I couldn't get my legs to move and that type of thing. Have you, ever did a demonic investigation, and have you had the same feelings?
I've done some things that were with some darker entities, but that could also just be, intelligent haunting. Somebody who passed away, it was just of a negative mindset. There was only one case that I was remotely involved with that seemed to have something of an inhuman nature involved with it, that could have been demonic, but I wasn't really too close to it. Like, I met with a guy, I interviewed him, but I had I had a priest with me that dealt with that kind of stuff, and I just turned him over to him. Like, that's, you punch your weight class, and I was like, this is not, what I care to do. If I come into that kind of stuff, will I investigate it, document it? Sure, but I pass along the torch to those people that are supposed to handle those kind of things. But there's that whole paranormal hangover thing happens, man. Like, you just get worn out, and it doesn't have to be something even of a demonic nature, but even just a darker nature, or just when you're doing this stuff, day in and day out. The brain gets a little warped. You get a little tired, and it's hard to rebound from that. And I think that was the toughest part of doing the international show, was we were on the road constantly. You had like one day off, back here domestic. Yeah, we'd film 3-4 nights, but then you'd have 2-3 days off. You might even come home for a couple of days. Like, you're out there on the road, and like, no one speaks your language. You haven't seen a TV show you understand in forever. Places that you eat, you think it's what you think it is, but it's not, and doesn't taste good. And you're driving back to the hotel at like 4 or 5 in the morning because they're working you like a dog, because they paid a lot of money to get you overseas, and they want tons of footage. And like, you get to the point where it's just like, you just feel like your brain's like a bowl of tapioca, So I think that the investigating itself wears you out, and just life wears you out. I have a little analogy that I use all the time that came to me when I was traveling doing this stuff. Was, you're on the plane, and they give you that safety briefing that nobody listens to anymore because we just listen to our phones. But they come up and they tell you, like, if something happens and the oxygen masks descend from the ceiling, make sure you put yours on before you can help somebody else. And I think that was one of the toughest things for me to think about, because I was like, well, if my wife or daughter were here, I don't care about me. I'm going to help them first. But if you stop and think about it, well, if you can't take care of yourself, you're really encumbering your position to try to help anybody else. And I think that when it comes to investigating, it's important for those out there that are doing this work to make sure they take time for themselves to get in the right place. And if something happens and you're not in the right place, spiritually or mentally or emotionally or physically, don't go do the case. It'll still be there, but don't put yourself at risk or burn yourself out, I remember one night I was and this had nothing to do with the spiritual portion of it, but I was driving home from an event, and I pushed myself way too hard, and I was exhausted, and I started to hallucinate. Like, I thought, I'm so glad this was like at 4 in the morning when nobody was on the road. I was on one of the major highways, and I could have sworn there was an overturned tanker truck with fire, EMS, rescue, cops, everything in front of me. And I jammed my brakes on and locked it all up. And then I look, and there's nothing there. There's nobody around me at all, thankfully. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and I get out, like, did some push-ups in front of my truck in the breakdown lane, like had the windows open. Like, I mean, I could have hurt myself. I could have hurt somebody else. I was just burnt right out. I just pushed myself way too far, And as investigators, I think that we're also at risk for that type of burnout. And trying to make that spiritual connection is taxing on us in an emotional and physical way, too, not to mention being up all night doing this stuff.
So speaking of like that kind of safety and stuff, do you have any advice for anyone looking to get into this field? There's really no like textbooks on how to do this, so.
Right. So that's the nice thing. Like, you can still make your own mark. Like, try something different. Don't just do what everybody else is doing. Do things in a safe manner. Make sure you're not going to places that you're not wanted. As exciting as it was for me as a child. To go out to places, the abandoned funeral home and stuff. Like, I remember plying off the plywood and crawling in there and all that thing. Like, you're not supposed to go in places like that. You're not supposed to go, trespassing and things like that. A lot of these places are condemned not because, they don't want you to research spiritual things, they don't want you to die and become part of the spirit world. These places are falling apart. It's always sad around Halloween time. There's people out there looking for a thrill or looking to investigate, and they go to some of these old buildings and they get hurt or they lose their own life. Like, it's not worth it for that. It should be a fun hobby, and it can be done during the day. It doesn't have to be done at night. It doesn't have to be 3 a.m. or any of that. The spirit world is alive and around 24/7. So get out there in a safe way. Try some new things. Read some old texts. Work on some old ideas. Work on new ideas. Just don't do anything harmful to anybody or to yourself.
Good words right there.
Absolutely.
So, Dustin, what's coming up on your schedule? What you got going on? Anything coming up soon?
I'll tell you, I'm really excited. In April, I'm going over to the Bishop Stang High School up in Massachusetts, and I'm going to be speaking. I think they're busing in kids from like 4 or 5 schools to hear a new motivational lecture I put together called the Great Emoji Lecture, and it's 100+ slides of just emojis and no words, and I tell a whole story while the emojis animate my story for everyone to see, because I realize that teenage girls and boys are making us go back into the days of Egyptians, and we're going to communicate through hieroglyphics. So I said, okay, if that's what we're going to do, I'm going to do it my way.
That's so true.
And I think it'll be fun for everybody to see this story that I'm going to present that's going to talk about living in a positive way and pursuing happiness and kindness over material things. So that's next up on the docket. And then I'm actually going to be local in southeastern Mass too. I'm going to be over at the Foxborough Library, and I'm doing a motivational lecture based on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
That's awesome.
So that should be cool. And then I'm bouncing all over the place. I got gigs in Philly and going out near Pittsburgh, and I'm hitting the Hinsdale House for the first time. I'm doing a charity thing down in Gettysburg, and thankfully go back to the old MI Paracon, and lots of really cool stuff. One event that I'm doing that's very important to me is going to be down in Dulles, Virginia in September 15th. It's Suicide Prevention Week, and that's a cause that's very close to my heart. I'm doing a benefit for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, remembering a friend of mine named Stacy Porter. And that's going to be really important and special. We're going to do a motivational lecture and put everything together for people, and hopefully try to stop suicide and keep people on a positive path. But if anybody's looking for me for anything, it's just DustinPari.com. It's the easiest thing to remember if you know who I am, although some people come to me at events and say, Steve, you're my favorite. I say, thank you. It's fine.
And you're also very active on the Twitter, too, I noticed.
That's my place.
Yeah, your Twitter's pretty active. You post pretty frequently, all positive too, which is nice to see on social media. Usually it's all anger.
Trying to keep the light on, man. I love Twitter. I really do. I like it.
So, I think that's pretty much it. We'll let you get back to your family. I know you had a long night. So we do a sign-off here. What we usually do is we go around and say our names, and then the last person says their name and then says rest in peace. So if you want to be so kind as to say rest in peace after your name, we'll go around in a circle and sign off.
Sounds good to me.
All right. I want to thank everyone at home for listening to another episode of People vs. Paranormal. As always, this is Ben.
I'm Anthony.
Yeah, I'm Tim.
And I am Dustin Pari. I'm going to put a little twist on this right here. I want you to live positively, and when you're done, rest in peace.